What's going on? Welcome back to my channel. Today I am in Orlando, Florida, still traveling at the moment, and I've got a little bit of time right now to actually make a video. I'm gonna try to make it a short video anyway. Right now I'm quite ill. I don't know what I've got, but I've got like a really sore throat and headache and whatever else. So I don't want this to go on too long. So I figured today I could talk about the topic of learning multiple languages at the same time. For me, this seems like quite an easy topic to talk about, but other people may struggle with this kind of thing. And I see so many people actually talking on Twitter and on Facebook, on YouTube comments, etc. Should they pick up 2 or 3 different languages at the same time to start from fresh? Should they start learning just one language at a time? To me, it seems very much the case that the easiest way to learn any particular language is to learn one language at a time. That way you can focus all your time and energy on that one language, and that to me just seems like the most obvious case. If for any reason you decide that you want to learn multiple languages at the same time, for example, for myself, when I was learning Spanish for many years, after a while I decided that I wanted to learn Polish. Learning Polish was a completely different ballgame in my experience. I'd never learned a Slavic language. I'd never really even looked at Slavic languages before. Obviously, it was completely different to Spanish. But because at that point, for me personally, I had curiosity into learning another language, like genuinely to sit down and think, which language am I going to learn? And I decided that I was going to learn a different language group altogether. And then there was a few other languages I then was deciding between. And eventually I came to the decision of Polish at that point in time to be my second language that I would actually sit down and seriously start trying to study and learn. I could make that decision because my Spanish was at a certain level already where I could at least understand a lot of it by reading. I understand some TV and whatever else on Netflix that I could watch, and I was quite basic still with understanding with listening, but I was still able to understand some bits. And there's just this feeling of when you're ready to learn a new language, when you're ready. If you have any doubts about whether you should or shouldn't pick up a new language, then it's possible you're not ready to actually pick up a new language fully. A lot of people try and go off of the CEFR framework and say when you get to a B2 level, then you're ready to go into the next language. I don't really like going based off of this framework, and instead I like to just go based off of feeling and how things just feel. Basically, if you decide, I've been studying this language for many years, I'm comfortable enough with this language, and I really want to learn a new language, I want to learn a new culture, then there's nothing wrong with pausing that language and going to another one, or studying them both at the same time. When you learn a language, when you decide to learn another language, you are basically making the commitment of spending the rest of your life learning that language every single day. You're always improving upon that knowledge. Even your first language, in my experience English, but for you maybe it's another language, even your first language, every day or every week or whatever the case may be, you're always learning something new of your language. You're always improving upon those skills because languages don't stay still. They're always evolving, they're always changing. And not only are they always evolving and they're always changing, but also languages are just big. They're numerous. There's so many words in languages. There's so many things to understand. There's so many historical words in English, for example, that are never used anymore. There's so many words in the English language that have been created within the last few years, for example. And there's also grammatical points and everything else. So in regards to learning a language, you never really fully know a language. And so in that case and in that frame of thinking, for me personally, I always say that I'm studying said language, even if I'm a pretty decent level at a language. I will most probably always say that I'm studying a language. At least at this point in time, I feel like that it's the best wording for myself personally. Whenever I say that I've been learning Spanish for 10 years or 13 years or however long exactly that it's been, I will typically phrase it as I've been studying Spanish for X amount of years, because that's how I view it. I view it as studying. I haven't fully learned it, I haven't fully grasped every single aspect of the language, and I never will. But I will still be learning things of that language. So that's just a personal way of expressing myself in regards to learning a language or studying a language. I know a lot of people just prefer the term learning a language or knowing a language. I'm a little bit apprehensive to say that I know a language, because then people have this thing in their head, this expectation of go ahead and speak everything in the language. You can translate literally every single word in the dictionary. It's just not the case, and you're not going to be able to do that. Even people who are very high up and very intellectual in that particular language and I don't know, like they just know a lot of words and vocabulary, they're still not going to be able to translate a whole bunch of words because there's a lot of words you just don't need to know, and that's going to take up too much time in regards to learning them all and whatever. And so coming back to sort of the more point of the video in regards to learning 2 or 3 or 4 languages at the same time or more than that, as I see a lot of people on Twitter typically learning 7, 8 or 9 languages at the same time. It really, for me, depends on whether you're comfortable starting a new language. Maybe it's not as intuitive for you to say like whether you're ready to learn a new language or not. Personally, I would just say like go for it. If you've been learning a language for a while and you decide actually I'm either a little bit stagnant in this language, I'm losing motivation to learn this language, or just anything else like that, and you just like you're not as excited as you used to be when you first started your first language, then try to just pick up a new language. Obviously, if you're not interested in other languages, it may not be the same for you, but for me, I enjoy learning languages of all sorts of different shapes and sizes, so I enjoy looking into languages all around the world. And so if I get bored of Spanish or of Polish, for example, I will just look into another language, like Japanese or German, for example. But obviously, if you've been learning even a language for a month and you decide it's not the language you thought it might have been, so say if you've been learning Japanese for a month and then you're like, actually, this isn't as fun as I thought it might have been, I find it a lot more difficult, or there's just some other aspect of the language that you're like, it wasn't for you, then you can say, okay, let's just stop there. I have learned a little bit, I've learned the basics, I've learned the hellos and how I use and everything else. Let's pick up Korean or let's pick up Chinese, for example. Technically, you could learn multiple languages at the same time, but obviously it's down to individual wants and needs. I would always recommend, before picking up a new language, to at least have a decent amount of time in the previous languages that you know. I wouldn't recommend starting, say, Italian, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Romanian, all at the exact same time, all at a very nothing level, because when you're a beginner in a language, you need to very much focus on that one language, at least to get you to a certain point. And when you're at a certain point, you then feel comfortable enough that you're not going to forget these words and phrases and how the language feels and how the language sounds and the tonation and everything else with the language. When you pick up a new language after you spend a bit of time in the first language or the previous language, then you're going to feel a lot more comfortable that you can go back to that language and you'll still remember a lot. I sort of have this now with learning Japanese for a year, but I sort of haven't really been properly learning it for a year because I've been too busy like doing other things in life. And then I've decided to try and learn French within a couple months, but because I've been away, I haven't actually been able to learn French for the last like 2 to 3 weeks, and I've still got another week or two away before I head back home, and then I can pick up on my French properly again. I've been really like lazy with my French, but that's only because I've been flat out doing other things while traveling. I haven't had time to like genuinely learn French. And so when I decided I wanted to learn French for a couple months, I had to obviously put my Japanese aside, but my Japanese already wasn't that great. And so it's one of those things where, because my Japanese wasn't at that level, by the time I get back to my Japanese properly, it's probably going to be a little bit worse than what it was before. But that was sort of a sacrifice I was willing to take, considering I wanted to just dive into French, because at the time I decided that French was something that I wanted to look more into, because a lot of the English language is basically like French, in a sense. Like there's about 29 or 30% of the English language is from French, from history basically, and from when William the Conqueror conquered England, and they had French as the official language for like 4 years in England. So because of that, a lot of English is French, and so I wanted to learn a bit of French, and I wanted to like understand more, because in history, if you knew French, you were sort of more educated, you were more revered, I guess. Whereas now, it's not so much, but I still just wanted to look into the language. It seemed interesting to me at that particular point in time, and it still does. And I realized anyway that Japanese is a language that's going to take me many years to like even get a good level at, because it's the first Asian language that I'm properly trying to seriously learn. And because of that, I'm just struggling a lot with Japanese right now. I'm trying my best to like read and to listen and to study and everything, but all that aside, like Japanese is just still a difficult language. And first-hand experience of studying multiple languages at the same time is not an easy thing. Studying Spanish, French, Polish, Japanese at the same time, really just it's a struggle to do it on a normal day-to-day basis. But when I've been away for like almost a month, it's like impossible, because every single day I'm up at like 7 in the morning and I'm back home at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And it's just so much work to then try and fit in those four languages elsewhere. There are things I do to obviously help me do this. So throughout the day, my phone's in certain languages, and so I see things written in different languages, and so I can read in that language and whatnot. But trying to actively study four languages at the same time is really difficult, without having like a really decent basis knowledge of any of those languages. Luckily, my Spanish is good enough where I don't need to like actively look at it. Like I could take a month off and I could still come back to Spanish, and it would take me maybe a few hours, and then my Spanish will be like revived back to the level it was before. My Polish, it's not like great, but again, I can take enough time off, like a couple weeks maybe, and come back to it, and it would still be okay. But because of learning my French and my Japanese, my Polish obviously took a bit of a decline as well. The moment I picked up Japanese, that was more exotic to me and more interesting to me than Polish was, because I'd already been studying Polish for a year at that point. And so I sort of stopped giving Polish enough attention. I gave more attention to Japanese, and that time I gave to Japanese was no longer being given the Polish. And this is the issue you have when you're trying to learn multiple languages at once, is that it's starting to rain, so I need to wrap up this video. But basically, the more languages you learn at the same time, the less time you can give to each individual language. Therefore, it makes it harder for you to learn each individual language. And instead of being able to get to a high level in just one language, you may only get to like a mid-level in like 2 or 3 languages. So it depends on your wants and needs in a language. It depends whether you're just learning them for fun, depends whether you're learning them because of business, or whether you want to move to a certain country. Whatever the case may be, you need to like really decide what you want to do. For me personally, I learn languages because I find it fun, I find it interesting, I love learning about other culture, and I love being able to speak to other people in other languages to whatever degree it may be, and for people to hopefully appreciate that I've taken time to learn the language and gone out of my comfort zone to try and speak their language, even if I'm not like great at it. My phone's just run out of memory, and so the audio is just slightly changed. Also, apologies for the audio in the background. There's always like generators and stuff going on back there, so I don't know how else to make this audio any better. Apologies, I know the audio sucks right now. It's the best I can do while I'm away, because I didn't bring my camera's like fluffy microphone thing, because that itself has issues, whatever. I don't need to explain it right now. I'm away for another couple of weeks. I'll be back home. I'll start making videos with better audio and whatever. But while I'm away, I just wanted to take the opportunity to actually make videos with nicer backgrounds, sort of. I mean, I've got a swimming pool here right now, for example. And obviously, when I was in New York, I did a quick video in my apartment as well. Yeah, that's basically it for this video. I hope it made sense. I'm sort of, because I'm ill, it's sort of off the cuff a little bit. I just wanted to sit down and make this video because I'm home alone at the moment, because I do feel that bad. And I've just been spending a lot of time sleeping, but I've got really like croaky, like scratchy throat. It feels like sandpaper rubbing together. It's horrible. I don't know what it is. Not COVID, but it's something. So let me know if there's anything you would add to this conversation down below in the comments. Like I say, I hope it wasn't too rambly. I hope it made some sort of coherent sense, or cohesive sense, I guess I should say. Thank you for watching. Follow my Instagram, which is down in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Do whatever you want to do. It all helps my channel, and I appreciate you so much for watching. If you got this far, then many thanks to you, and I will see you guys in the next one for another video. Thank you and goodbye.